And so we're going to be talking about how organizations provide these types of services with two wonderful leaders. So let's get the show on the road. And again, please do contribute your questions as we go forward. Welcome to the Nonprofit Report, your update on nonprofit organizations, issues, and leaders. I'm your host, Mark Oppenheim. Today, we're talking about caring for those with disabilities and medical complexities with our special guests, Bryan Neider, CEO of Ability Path, and Dr. Robert Ireland, President and CEO of Bello, Machre. And a reminder to Zoom attendees that we'll take 3 snap polls during the show and we'll announce results. And your questions submitted to the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen will be included in our discussion. So thank you both for joining us. Bryan, Bob, I'm just so happy to be here today with you. It's great.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here too.
So I'm going to toss a question over to you. And this is something that really surprised me. You know, I'm in the business, right? I'm in the business of recruiting leaders and talking with people who are dealing in civil society. So I should know this, but get this. In the last 12 months, 21% of adult Americans were caregivers to an adult or child with special needs. And that's just the special needs cluster of caregiving, totaling over 53 million adults functioning as caregivers. And according to the AARP, this is up from an estimated 43.5 million caregivers in 2015. So this is, it's a really rewarding thing, but it's incredibly stressful. It takes huge resources. So Bryan, let's go over to you and we'll talk a little bit about Ability Path and your slice of that 53 million.
Right.
And then Bob will talk about Bello Machre. But Bryan, could you just give us a sense of the work that you do and the types of constituents that you serve?
Sure. Happy to do that, Mark. Thank you. So Ability Path is going to be 103 years old this coming June. We serve children and adults with developmental disabilities and support families as well. So we start early age with therapy programs, early assessment. We operate several inclusive preschools, and then we serve young adults and adults in employment, independent living skills. We operate cooperative living homes and day and community-based programs. So we have about 300 plus employees serving over 1,200 families and individuals every single week. You know, it's interesting that the topic of caregiving is something that we've been sharing a lot in advocating for housing. But the issue in the special needs area, 88% of adults with special needs live at home with a parent or a caregiver, family caregiver, 88%. And just literally this week, being yesterday, I guess, heard from several parents who are well into their 80s, and the anxiety and fear they have about who's going to care for my child when I'm gone is one of the most heartbreaking things I have to listen to. Because the system of care in not just California, but I think every state is really lacking in meeting these needs of individuals that we serve that are now seniors. And how do we have a system that allows caregivers who want to be able to do this work, have a wage that is affordable to live in the area, and to be able to fill this gap that is out there that's pretty significant. And it feels like it's growing, Mark. And like you said, the stat is 21%, 53 Americans. I would venture to say that trend is probably going up as the safety net provided by state and local governments is getting thinner, which means nonprofit organizations like ours and probably Robert's have to help pick up the slack. It's hard for us to do that, but we're doing everything we can to make sure those needs are being met. And in this particular case, the senior parents really are in great need of support for their adult children to make sure they have a support system around them when their parents aren't here any longer.
And you're making a very good point, right? Very often there is this this left-right, conservative, liberal kind of debate about, are we investing in a way that is fostering codependence? But what your point is that when you have an aging child, where you are concerned about who will take care of that child, who they can trust to provide appropriate support, in the interest of the child. There is no fallback. There is no codependence. You have no choice, right? And the only way you can do this is find somebody whose word you can actually accept beyond your own existence, right? That is
That's
a
correct.
scary, scary aspect, isn't it, Bob?
It is, and that's I've had so many conversations over my years at Bello Machre with families, and the what comes to mind is a conversation I had, I guess it was about a year ago, with the mother of somebody we support in one of our 50 group homes, and we have 3 or 4 people in each group home, and a live-in staff person, direct support professional, plus other people come in. And Eileen said that when her husband passed a few years before, she said, and I was teary-eyed in this conversation, she said, he passed in peace because he knew that his daughter was in a good place, a loving home. And the loving part, we talk about support, we talk about all those good things, community involvement. What I'm, as a parent, hoping for my kids and grandkids is they have the opportunity to love and be loved. And that sounds a little hokey, but that still is at the center of Bello Machre's mission. When we do our job correctly, not only do the families feel a piece of that love, the individuals we're supporting, and our staff, when they're doing good work and they're so involved in somebody's life that they become family, we know that the dreams of our founders 50 years ago are still a reality.
And Bob, you grew up in a family that cared for others in this way. Could you share part of your story as well with us?
Sure. When I was a teenager, my mother had grown up in a variety of foster homes and had some good ones, and wanted to give back. And so our family adopted my younger 3 siblings, who were 3, 4, and 7 years old, all of whom have intellectual disabilities, and all of whom have lived amazingly independent lives, depending on each other, depending on my younger sister, who kind of looked over them for many years, or looks over them. And so that led me to this field. And I wanted to be a chaplain and a therapist. And as we talked before, I had many professors and mentors tell me I was too manipulative and controlling to be a therapist. So after I finally realized they were right, I became a supervisor, a manager, where you get paid to be manipulative and controlling.
You know, this is a great, and Brian's laughing, right? Because Brian, how attendant to detail you have to be as somebody who is responsible for the sustainability of an organization, right? You have to pay attention, don't you, Brian, to the finances, to
Sure.
the retaining staff, to keeping people happy, to making sure that the skill set evolves in every dimension that is needed as the organization develops. So could you talk a little bit about that sort of tension between heart and getting it done? Because heart is important, but not enough. And being able to have the technical skills to get it done is important, but not enough. Talk about that tension that you live
Sure.
with every day, Brian, between your business sensibility and the kinds of different decisions you make today here at Ability Path than you did at EA, for example.
Right. Great question, Mark. I think the challenge is that in talking about caregivers, the folks in our staff have incredible heart in caregiving. And so when we think about teams, my job on the team is to make sure that we're able to give them the resources they need. And that could be their own pay to make sure they can stay here in the Bay Area, which is a very expensive place to live. but also have everything else around them to be able to fulfill what their vision is for great, high quality programs.
So they're the
And-
experts. They're telling you what they need, and you're
Absolutely.
learning from them, and then you're
Right.
responding.
My job is to give them what they need to do their job. And it doesn't mean that we don't have conversations about trade-offs, because I think everybody knows their trade-offs. There are trade-offs in their day about how they manage a program. So
Right.
they're making the same sort of trade-offs, just a different level. And I think there's a lot more consensus building, because we are a community-based organization. We're here to serve. And, that's maybe a little bit of a difference than a lot of corporate organizations, which is it's a little bit more hierarchical and decisions are made a little bit more passed down or from, executive leadership.
So if I'm working for
give
you,
and take between community, staff, and again, the realities of what we're trying to accomplish. And that means
So
that
Bryan,
there's
let me
a process.
let me
Sorry.
interrupt you. If I'm
Yeah.
working for you and you're the head of operations at EA, right? And I'm developing a property and I'm not doing well. I'm just lagging. I'm not meeting my deadlines. My costs are too high. Eventually, you're going to call me in and you're going to say, Mark, it's time for you to go. Right?
Or your project may be killed.
Or you're
Right?
going to kill
We're not
my
gonna fund
project.
that project anymore. Right? We can't do that. we're here to serve.
Well, that's right. You can't, right?
Right. Well, and we're not going to. That's not our mission. Our mission is to find a way to make it happen to serve the community. And so a large part of it is, working with donors, foundations, finding ways. By the way, we have a lot of folks. We've done a lot of innovative project program designs and coming from the teams. And my job is then to go find, very much like a venture capital, going out to find the donor that wants to empower that team to go put that together. For example, one of them is a program that we have called Pathways. And so that Pathways program is very much a participant guided program where they get to choose what they want to do, and staff build the program around what that outcome is that they're wanting to achieve. So, we've been fortunate to have donors fund these individual, very custom projects and programs for the folks that we serve. And that's my job. The team came up with the idea. Let me get you the resource to go do it. And that's kind of how we try to navigate those things.
So, Bob, I'm going to ask you the opposite question. Have there ever been times when you haven't been able to continued support for a program or for something that you've invested in, and you actually had to make that hard decision to figure out a sort of a different route? You just can't do it anymore. It just isn't sustainable for your organization. Have you had to take that business side and have the business side predominate in a particular decision?
Yes. And what comes to mind is a number of years ago, we had a respite care program. We heard from families, some families, we had a respite care program where our staff would go into the homes and while family took a break, and that worked for some, but not for everybody. So we had a home that we staffed, and so families essentially could go do what they wanted to do, know that their loved family member was in a good spot with trained professionals, and we couldn't make it work financially. So we had to pull the plug, and affected not only the lives of families who depended upon us, but also affected the lives of staff who were so committed to that program. But you can only operate a program in the red so long before it starts to hurt the whole organization. So it was a painful decision, but one we made.
All businesses are a compromise of sorts. And when you're caring for human beings and you're trying to make sure that every dollar invested is providing the biggest impact, you sometimes have to try things, and some of those things fail. Right. That's basically what you're saying. Do you have, Bob, and then I'd like to ask Bryan, do you have a certain amount of your investment in expense every year that goes to testing things that experimentation, kind of a research and development kind of an approach for caring, some of those investments might not work. Do you actually budget in that way where you're trying things on a pretty regular basis, the way a product might be developed in a company?
Perhaps we should, but we don't, and that's what drives our chief finance officer crazy, because we say, "Hey, let's try this," and then we go to her and say, "Can we do this?" I should say, let me correct that. We don't say, "Can we do this?" Say, "How can we make this happen?" And that's one of the more exciting parts of my career has been the part where we say, "Hey, this is a need. Let's see if we can fill it, and we'll figure out the money later."
So you don't have a budget, but you do it anyway.
Yeah, that's scary for our finance. That's why our CFO never sleeps well.
Hell of a business model, right, Bryan? Do you do the same thing?
We do, but maybe slightly different. We do have typically grants that are rolling over and or donors that have funded something. So I'd say rather than budgeting it, it's usually something that's been carrying over because we've had time to get the funding in place, kind of what Bob is doing. But it's something that we have ongoing all the time. I was going to mention one other thing about having to close a program, whether it's funding, but also there's philosophy and what our values are. For example, we closed our sheltered workshop and sub-minimum wage program about 7 years ago because, we believe in inclusion and we believe everyone deserves at least minimum wage. And it was funny because I had to go around and meet with a couple of employers about that. And frankly, they didn't know they were paying sub-minimum wage. And every one of them increased all of our participants in their employment program to minimum wage or greater.
Oh, you had 100%. You had 100% positive response
Yes.
to
Yes.
raising a business's
Yep.
cost just because it was the right thing to do.
Yep. And the biggest challenge actually was some families that were concerned that their child may not be employed because of the sheltered workshop. But we found work for those individuals in all of our programs at program site, doing some office work and things like that, because a paycheck, as we all know, is important to everyone. And having that paycheck was a thing we wanted to make sure wasn't lost, even though the work was a bit different. And sometimes it's easier to talk to people about not having the financial means for a program that is not viable than talking about a philosophy change for something they've been comfortable with for a long time, but may not be in line with what we're hoping to achieve in the community at large for the folks that we serve.
Is part of what you did with that approach to empower two people. On the one hand, you're empowering the individual who is doing a job by making sure that they are paid a fair wage commensurate with the minimum wage standards of the state or the municipality. On the other side, you're also empowering the business. You're empowering the business to do the right thing. You're giving them data and you're saying, hey, can we do this? Can we actually make a contribution to our community here in this way? And their response is, you're giving me information. Yeah, we can do this, right? That's also, you're engaging them in that. Bob, do you use this approach of getting people into the tent of your service by sort of sharing information, by fostering contact with people who are not necessarily in your circle yet and bringing them in?
Absolutely. And, we also offer meaningful day services. So that can be employment. And also we have meaningful day services that offer opportunities to volunteer, activity oriented, not based on a building, but out in the community. It's neat to see when the folks we support and our staff make connection with a business in the community, how that changes the business. We've had it talk with so many owners, managers who have said, we had no idea. We thought we were going to be helping out an individual with disability. We had first no idea of their abilities, And secondly, we have no idea how much they would impact us. And what else can we do? Some of our great board members, their first introduction to our organization was as an employer, as a sponsor. And so it's a circle that keeps going around and getting bigger and bigger.
Well, those who serve shall receive service, right?
Yeah.
We did two polls when this was the middle of the second one. The first poll does confirm that 20%, it was exactly 20% of the people who are attending this session are providing care. And many who responded expect to be providing care sometime in the future. It's a really interesting result, kind of unexpected. I didn't realize that it was 1/5 of American adults are providing some sort of service. And then the other poll, which is still in process, we asked, if you are caring for a loved one with disability, what is your greatest need? And we only provided one choice, but we provided financial assistance, additional caregiving support, emotional support, and advocacy for a loved one. It's very evenly split. So when you look at the needs that people have, there's financial, there's caregiving, there's emotional support. Is it really an all of the above, Bob? Or does the need really cluster, or does it have a hierarchy where it starts off with one need, but eventually, if that need is fulfilled, you go on to other needs? How do you see it?
My experience is the biggest need that we see on a daily basis is for information.
Information.
Because people feel so isolated, and part of Bello Machre's mission is not, if we can't provide the supports or services you're looking for, can we help you find someone who can? And so just sharing the information beyond that, we often experience people have no idea of the complexity of the service delivery system and how you get in it. And, part of our mission is to hold people's hands as we walk through a very complex funding system. Maryland is a pretty good state, very good state in terms of funding opportunities for people to live really good, rich lives, whether it be employment or meaningful day or more intensive residential services. I'm not sure I answered your question.
Well, but it's interesting that you provided a different answer, which was the need for information. Bryan, in terms of the intake that you have, do people come to you with a paucity of information as well, that do you have to fill that gap?
Absolutely. Similar to Bob, we have a family support services group that is really kind of that navigator. Families that are in the system and those working in it is probably, and having dealt with some very complex stuff back in the business corporate days, this is one of the most complex systems out there. And to navigate it while trying to raise a child or take care of an adult child, dealing with maybe your own job, it is worse than being on hold for an hour with trying to get an health insurance reimbursement. It's a nightmare. And agencies generally don't want to pay for it. So you talk about the ultimate runaround and finding a braided way of serving a whole need of an individual. It's taxing, and our role is very critical in what Bob does. It's an absolute must to help these families know who to talk to, where to go, because otherwise they're missing out on opportunities for their kids to have access to all the services that they're entitled to.
And if you think about extending the amount of caregiving beyond the 20% that are of adults that are taking care of people who are disabled, and you extend that to children, adults who are taking care of children, and adults who are taking care of elders, right? Yes. I mean, we're talking about 90% basically, unless you're adolescent with healthy parents, who is fairly well off, you're taking care of somebody. It would seem that there is a better American way to provide more rationality, more efficiency in the system than to fritter away all of our resources and the most valuable resource of time in this runaround, isn't there, Bob and Bryan?
You would think so. You know, the other challenge we're seeing as the families, as the parents become older, they become less capable
Right.
of dealing with the complexity of our system. And so we haven't come up with a better way yet. I'm sure there's something out there other than to reach out and use our network of person-to-person contact and letting people know they're not alone. And if we can't help you, we'll help you find somebody who can.
So I want to ask you both about access, because if you're more educated, right? I have a college degree. You gentlemen have college degrees. You're more educated if you are at a higher level of income. If you live in an urban area, there are all sorts of different disparities that we have based in race, income, location, education, and so on and so forth, that get in the way. So that complexity is part of the thing that promotes disparity, right? If you have a more difficult time navigating the complexity, does that, how do you deal with trying to provide services across a broad front and dealing with the issues of disparity, whether it is based in income or race or those kinds of different elements? How do you navigate that given the complexity of your day? Bryan?
So we about 5 years ago, we opened offices, satellite offices in what would be considered underserved communities, hiring multi-language capable staff, but also a lot of it is building trust in the community. And it takes a couple of years to make sure that people know we're for real, we're going to be here, we're not going to pull the rug out from under them, that we're here to do the kind of things that they need to support their entire family and their children in this case. And then after that, being early on, we're one of the first in our service area here to do that. Then grant funding came in. So we took that all on our own dime. That was sort of that innovation investment that the board supported. And again, that came from staff about wanting to serve families and communities that don't have easy access. And after that, we were able to get grant funding for those programs to make sure that that continued and became even more robust. And I do need to do a shout out. The Chan Zuckerberg Initiative from Priscilla Chan and Mark Zuckerberg were the ones who funded a lot of that program to help make that access happen.
So you have this recognition of a problem. That was Bob's whole idea of communication, right? Sharing information, and then taking that information and creating out of that action. Bob, how do you take your cut? Because I know Maryland very well. I know the geographic distribution of people in the state and the various disparities that exist in various cities. How do you approach that problem set?
Just by constantly reaching out. And I don't know if we're in Maryland's pretty much county-based, state-funded, but the service deliveries are often county-based, and we serve a couple of counties. And quite honestly, the people who live in the inner city, Baltimore, Washington, do not receive the same quality of services. They don't typically know how to use the system effectively, know how to use to go up the ladder in the state bureaucracy to get things done. So I guess how we do it is we reach out family by family and encourage our families to knock on the door of whenever they see the need for service and to bring that to us. Also through our board of directors. They really not only represent the community, but they are our hands in reaching out to the community.
Part of this is is seeing beyond the barriers, right, Bryan?
Yes, absolutely. And Mark, apologize. I just want to echo something that Bob said earlier. And I can't, and Bob, maybe you've experienced this too. We have never lost an employment site ever. Once that door is open for an inclusive work setting, they become the best advocates for telling somebody else to open up another employment site. So I just want to put that out there. The community is craving for inclusion and opportunity for the folks we serve. Our job is trying to open those doors and have more advocates to make it happen. Because guess what? Bob talked about this in the beginning. It's all about feeling a sense of belonging and being loved by others by being able to participate in the community wholly. And I didn't want to lose that because I was thinking about this actually last week. We've never lost an employer, ever. Once that door's open, it doesn't close.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, we got an anonymous person who said the poll question, we were asked about supportive costs and how do we do this, and there's no pat answer. That's what the comment says. There just is no pat answer, and the person confessed, I don't know what the answer is either. I think that what we all need to do, every single person who is attending this, every single person should talk about these issues with their families, because it is going to be us, right? It's going to be us one day. Everybody on this call should be talking about this in their community, and doing what you say, Bryan, doing what you say, Bob. You see a need, you talk about it. How do you together, business communities, nonprofits, government actors, professionals, people with means and people with time, right? People who can share their various abilities, their knowledge, whether it's a direct service person or as someone who was on the path of being a minister and finding that they're a better manager than a minister, right? And doing your ministry in that way. That's really the answer. Bryan Neider of Ability Path, thank you so much. Bob Ireland, thank you for Bello, Machre, and your great experience. And thank you so much. Please thank your staffs. Please thank your families. Please thank your clients who are part of this solution and your donors, really. And thank you for sharing your insights with us today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bob, nice meeting you.
And you, sir.
Keep up the good work.
You too. Take care.